Welcome to today's episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we're going to be digging into, are you willing to fix your marriage? That's actually a decent question to consider because it involves some work. And you might be feeling like, I've been working on this and it's not any different. Well, yeah, okay, maybe you're doing the wrong things or the right things at the wrong time. And that's also a piece of this. But to know what it is, what it's going to take, like I think we should have some awareness around that. So we're going to talk today with our favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove. Kyle's so generous and patient with so many things, including me.
His name.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we're talking today about this particular thing. Like it's a common thing. I talk to women, and you talk to people all during the week about, and you could see here's this thing they need to go do. And then the question is, are you going to do anything about it? Like, are we in a space where we want to stop complaining because that achieves nothing and then move forward and do something different? So before we get digging into this topic, we want you to know there's some free resources over at greaterimpact.org. You can grab a PDF, stop walking on eggshells. You can take a marriage assessment and find out just how bad is this hot mess that you're dealing with. And we just want to recommend that you stop by over there. But let's dig into this topic today, Kyle. Where do you want to start? It's kind of a broad topic, but it's really important.
It is a broad topic, but this is a question that I hold in reserve anytime I am beginning work with an individual or a couple that is dealing with, relational damage
Mhm.
when they're dealing with needing to repair to restore. I've always got this question in my pocket, and it just depends on what I hear at first as to whether I play that card or not.
Mm.
And I will frequently hear people say, I want to fix, I want to do, I want to make it better. I want. And that's great. But what I'm listening for in that conversation is, are you willing?
Mhm.
Because basically what a lot of people will say is, I want to, but I'm not willing to.
Yeah, what is that about? Like,
Mm.
what is that?
That is a real dilemma. That's what that is, because what they're trying to convey when they say, I want to, is the desire to reconcile, to resolve, to repair.
Mhm.
But when they say with their actions or inactions, but I'm not willing to, well, then that sends a message that completely wipes out the first one. And we're really, if we're not back to square one, we're even further behind that,
Mhm.
because it's created another question in the marriage, in the relationship, as to, are you really committed to it or not? But a lot of people will commit to wanting to make things better and even commit to being willing to, but then they don't take any direction. They
Mhm.
don't utilize intentionality and utilize resources and um, do some of the work that is necessary for a relationship to be repaired. Or they think that that's the work, and after it's repaired there is no more work.
Mhm.
Or there's just a lot of things people think. But I'm reminded of a cartoon, a very, very old cartoon. It's 49 and 24. It's 59, 60. This one is 73 years old.
Oh man, you're not even
No,
that old.
63 years. Oh, that was going to make me 73, 72. Oh, I'm not there yet. This one is 63 years old. It was printed in 1961. The cartoon is called Juniper Strikes Again.
Mm.
And Juniper is a priest, a comical little, kind of silly priest. And in this one frame cartoon, Juniper has shot arrows at the fence. And each arrow that's on the fence so far is in the middle of the bullseye. And everyone is amazed at what a great shot Juniper is with the bow and arrow. And there's a monk standing next to him, obviously trying to figure out what's going on. And Juniper says, it's easy. First, you shoot the arrow, then you just take your paintbrush and you draw the circles around it.
Yeah.
So I think that that reminds me of the approach or lack of approach that a lot of people take when it comes to reconciling, restoring, fixing problems, um, especially when they realize that the problem is me or
Hmm.
them, is the individual realizes I'm a big part, of the whole that we have in our marriage.
Well, and thank God for that realization, because without it, they're just sitting around blaming their partner for everything and nothing changes.
Yeah. So, you know, I'll just use what I do for a living. For instance, people will say, well, let's go to counseling. Okay, I'll go to counseling. But then when they realize if they have a good therapist that this is going to be a lot of hard work, suddenly, they expect the counseling to fix it for them,
Hmm.
and counseling never will.
Right.
So when you draw the circles after you've shot the arrow, kind of like that, makes you feel kind of good about the direction things are going, but nothing's really changed. And so it can give you a false sense of confidence in the relationship or in the marriage because we did something good for ourselves. We went to counseling. We showed
Hmm.
up. We sat there the entire time. Nobody got up and left. We didn't fight. This is great. But then they do nothing from that point until the next time they go to counseling.
Hmm.
Well, it's probably going to take a lot longer with that approach to get anywhere with it than anybody wants to give. So it gives a false sense of confidence. It provides an avenue for avoidance. To say, well, look at how good we're doing. We shot that arrow right in the middle of the bullseye. We showed up, we were there, we were on time, and we stayed the whole time. And it didn't fix anything. It does not mean you're a good archer, or a good spouse.
Might mean you're a good painter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the third thing that you know drawing the circles after you shoot the arrow approach does is it proves that you're lazy.
Mm.
Did I say that out
Ouch.
loud?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
did.
I
True
did.
though.
And I think a lot of us, I say this includes me, have had to learn that lesson, that just because you point the vehicle in the direction of the destination doesn't mean that it's not going to take some effort and some work to get it there.
Hmm.
And, sometimes we say, well, let's point it in the right direction. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm having this vision of my husband was out of town all last week. He was hiking in Montana with our son, and they had a great time. And I'm here on the farm, and I've got a couple acres to mow, and my zero turn lawnmower is low on gas. And I knew I couldn't get the gas can open to
Those are
re
tricky.
yeah, well, that was like I've got arthritis. I didn't have the mojo in my fingers to pull that off. So I had to
Hmm.
enlist the help of a neighbor because I knew I had this vision that if I was mowing this lower field that we have around the edges of it, that I was going to run out of gas down there and all would be lost. Like I would be stranded forever. So I knew the potential of that. And then the mowers out in the rain, it's just all this stuff. And so I navigated getting a neighbor over here to help me undo the gas can, and I felt a little silly because it just is. But but had I not done that, I would have run out of gas. Like that's just how that works. And to your point, if you don't foresee potential issues, or if you think you're doing something but you're not doing the right things, or you're not actually like if you show up once a week and that's where you work on your relationship, like give me a break.
Yeah.
How many people do that? You and I both have seen people that that's what they do and they think they're doing something. It's like, no,
Hmm.
you're not. You're not. You're not foreseeing what's coming down the pike. You're not doing it on the daily, which really, really matters.
It does. And I think it's important for people from the get-go to understand the difference in want to and willing to. And they're not the same thing.
Yeah,
And
so
I'm
break that
reminded,
apart for us. Yeah.
yeah, I'm reminded of something John Eldridge wrote in Wild at Heart when he's talking about, most men want to be the knight in shining armor, not army.
Mhm.
They want to be their wives' knight in shining armor. but they're not all willing to bleed like one.
Mm,
Okay. The ones that bleed like one are the ones that do the work.
mhm.
And when I say want to and willing to aren't the same thing, I'm talking willing to means I'm willing to do the work. Good relationships take hard work
Yep.
always.
So it's kind of like health, fitness.
Hmm.
I want to be able to run 4, 8 miles, whatever,
Yeah.
but I'm not willing to go out and run and then work up to that point. I'm
Right.
not
You can't
willing
get
to,
to four without doing two first.
yeah, hello. Like you can't bench press 150 without doing 10. You got to start and then be persistent with it.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Yeah. And so work, think about what work is. Work is hard sometimes. Work is inconvenient sometimes. Sometimes we have to work when we're tired. Sometimes working causes us to get dirty and muddy.
Hmm.
Sometimes work causes us to have an injury. I can't hardly go out and do anything anymore without cutting myself or scratching myself. Or, they say that as you age, your skin gets thinner, and
Hmm.
they're right. They're right about that, and I'm proving it. But, um, I think that we overestimate what's needed to do the work. The willingness is good, and it's a great start. But I think that we think the things that we have to do in the job to do the work are more complicated than they really are. And I have three things that I'd like to introduce to our listeners today that would be a great start in terms of drawing the targets first and then shooting the arrows.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. You want to hear them?
Yeah. Bring them on. Bring it on.
All right. So, three things, and I'm just going to list them off and then we'll go back and talk about them if that's okay. What a good relationship requires doing the work. It requires to communicate, to do it wrong, and then to do the work. Okay. Be willing to communicate, be willing to do it wrong, but be willing to do the work to get it right.
Hmm.
Because none of us do it right from the get go.
Right.
I don't care who you are. I don't care who your parents are. I don't care where you grew up, what church you went to, what your GPA was in high school or college. Work inside of a relationship requires being there to learn it and being there to do it.
So, practical example of this is we know we need to talk about something. Maybe it's a financial thing. And instead of avoiding the topic, which too many people do,
That's easy.
yeah, it is until it's not, and you're forced,
Mm-hmm.
right? But let's say we choose to go into that. And the work part of it is first that choice. Second, planning out how am I going to do this in a way that's not going to come across as you're spending too much money,
Right.
right? The assault. Yeah, how do I approach this from a win-win, no losers policy kind of standpoint and take my partner's feelings into consideration? You can't walk into those things like you're crossing traffic on a no traffic road. You've got to walk into that with you're downtown Cincinnati. You're not sure where the stupid middle of the road alleyways are that change lights, and suddenly there's cars everywhere, and there's the subway, and there's those horse things again, and
Yeah.
there's just a lot, boom, all at once on a Saturday night. And so you have to have like all systems go.
I just had an image of the old video game Frogger
Okay.
when the frog's trying to cross the road
Mm.
and there's all
Yeah.
kinds of obstacles coming at it. That's what that sounded like to me.
Yeah. So splat, if you
Yeah.
don't have your wits about you, or if you're just gonna like think this should be easy, like no, it's not.
No.
It may not be a good time for your partner. So like ask, is this a good time to talk about money? Like
Hmm.
that'll put the fear of God in them. They need to make a decision and you need to navigate. Well, when can we talk about it?
Yeah.
and then have all the awarenesses going and listen well in that.
Yeah. I think the important thing about that first point about communicating is that effective and respectful communication does not come naturally for anybody.
Oh, hello. Yeah.
Okay.
You have
So
to
to
think about
expect
it.
that you can go in and do it without some at least brushing up or at least a little bit of self-help or
Mhm.
education about good communication. And again, conceptually, in theory, communication is probably the simplest thing we know. Okay. But in practice, it's one of the most difficult to do.
Yeah.
And so I don't think people can draw that line between theory and practice without just throwing their hands up and say, it seems to be so simple. What am I missing?
Hmm.
And it's just a few simple things. It really is. And the willingness to do it wrong.
So before we move into that, because I think that's a big topic. I love that whole concept. When wouldn't you say people are usually set up to succeed more often when that communication piece involves God? You know,
I
that
was
we're
surprised you
praying.
even asked me that question.
I mean, it is kind of a no-brainer, but how many people actually don't even consider that?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, not even God expects you to do perfect,
Hmm.
but asking for divine assistance makes all the sense in the world.
Hmm.
The thing is, when we ask for it, we can't just go back and try to do it the way that we've been doing it before.
Amen.
Okay. We have to expect God's going to show us something.
Hmm.
He's going to show us a need. He's going to teach us a skill. He's going to give us a reason to do what we're doing that's going to be bigger than the reason we had in our mind,
Yeah, that's fair.
you know? And if, if you're all about your spouse, what you want to do is even through a conflict or even through resolving something or rebuilding something, you want to build them up. And so this is what we do with our communication. We learn
Mhm.
to resolve conflict in a way that builds one another up rather than continuing to tear one another down, which is probably what we've done in the past.
Well, and I like Gottman's stat around this that masterful, healthy couples have 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative in
Mhm.
conflict. In general, they have 20 positive interactions for every 1 negative. So you take that 1 negative and decide, okay, this is conflict. Well, inside of that, you got 5 positives. So they're gentle with each other. That's huge.
Yep. And we talked about this dozens of times, and we will talk about it dozens more, I'm sure, of just the need when there is conflict, when there is when the bridge is out, the need to set aside our emotional
Hmm.
upset and handle the conflict with logic.
Yep.
Um, we know it's pretty evident when we're upset, and it's pretty evident why.
Hmm.
Okay. We don't need to continue beating that as we try to go through the process of resolution. It's imperative, actually, that we put it aside because problems don't get solved with emotion, they get solved with logic.
Well, and that assumes that we're dealing with a problem that's actually tangible.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times we create problems that are just our feelings getting hurt because we're
Hmm.
taking somebody's behavior as being about us, then it's not. And so we
Yeah.
spin this up into something completely different. Like if we're doing that kind of dance, like we need to be aware that that's not that's within us.
Yeah.
So a good therapist would be useful around that stuff or prayer
Yeah.
practice, something. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't hurt to learn to communicate. Um, it doesn't hurt to do it wrong because you can learn. And it doesn't hurt to do the work because we know that work is hard. And like we said before, when we know we're going to work, we know there are going to be difficulties, there are going to be challenges. And I don't have a choice but to accredit I don't know if that's the right word because I'm going to talk about accrediting something that fails. To accredit the failure of a lot of issues and even marriages to the fact that we're not committed enough in the relationship to be willing to do the work. And that's spelled Lazy.
Hmm.
I don't want to work that hard.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that this is going to change in that person. So
Mm.
it would be like, I've had clients say it would be like making an investment that I know is going to fail.
Wow.
That's
Yes.
rough.
Yeah, that is. So at that point, it's kind of like, well, what are you doing
Yeah.
then?
And how would you like to be the other person sitting on the couch when that's said?
Yeah. Talk about
This is how I see you. I see
devastating.
you as a dry hole.
Yeah.
I'm not going to invest any more in you because I'm pretty sure it's going to fail anyway, and it's because of you.
Wow.
That's not very motivating.
Oh, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about this be willing to fail thing because
Hmm.
most people don't understand that failure is part of the process to being successful. Like
Yeah.
that's a super common thing.
Yeah. I remember as a young child when I began playing baseball in an organized little league.
Hmm.
I had not played much at all. I was kind of a sickly child and so didn't get out much. But I loved baseball and I really, really desperately wanted to play and wanted to be good at it. And I knew the rules. I knew everything about the game that I could know at that age, but I didn't have the skills to pull it off. When I started, I was the littlest guy on the field,
Hmm.
and I was one of the youngest people on the field. And needless to say, the first year that I played, I struck out a lot. Struck out a lot. I was this skinny, spindly, little, tiny popcorn fart of a kid. I was afraid of the ball,
Mm.
but I wanted so desperately to be good at baseball.
Mm.
And I was so devastated every time I struck out because I let me down, I let my team down, and it didn't occur to me when I was 10 that nobody expected me to go up there and knock in runs every time.
Hmm.
Did not occur to me. I was a part of the team.
Right.
What was expected of the 12-year-olds was also expected of me. Well, I didn't come through.
Hmm.
And my dad and some coaches, had to help me learn along the way to get better at this. You're going to strike out
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Even the best players in the world strike out sometimes because while you're getting better as a hitter, somebody else is getting better as a pitcher. And so to be the baseball player you want to be, you have to be willing to strike out. You have to be willing to have the confidence in what you do, or you'll strike out a lot because going up there without a plan or with a lack of confidence, that's an easy out.
Hmm.
So it's the same, I believe, in the restoration of a relationship, in that if you have the confidence that whatever you're doing is going to make progress toward restoring that relationship, sometimes even making mistakes teaches us so much
Hmm.
about ourselves and about the dynamics of the situation. Sometimes a mistake made is more revealing than communicating something effectively and properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to be willing to make mistakes is just saying, know that you're not going to be perfect at this. Nina, this is a cultural problem in the United States right now.
Yeah.
People expecting to grow up from adolescence into adults and instantly be good at the things that they want to be good at.
Hmm.
And when they fail, when they make mistakes, when they do it wrong, they quit.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't for me. I'll find something else,
Hmm.
okay? Including significant other relationships.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's kind of like just, be willing to laugh at yourself. Be willing to say, golly, I can't believe I said that, or wow, I can't believe I did that. Boy, I have a lot to learn.
Hmm.
And again, we do, but we take ourselves so seriously when we get in those situations that if we don't do it perfectly, we bow out and say, "Nah, I'm not good at this. I'm done."
Yeah. Well, and I think we have unrealistic expectations of ourselves and other people. I work with a lot of couples that they want to immediately go to the big things that they see are big issues in the relationship. It's like you guys can't navigate who's picking up Joey from soccer. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think you're going to be able to handle, the $20,000 of credit card debt that you've accrued over the last 15 years and whose fault that is? Like, no, how about we work on soccer first? How
Hmm.
about we have enough emotional control to navigate a small discussion and build on that? Um, and the Lord personally taught me that when I was separated from my husband, we would have these weekly dates twice a week, or we start off with one, and then we added another, and then we added another, and then we ended up not being separated over time. But those first, like I learned this the hard way. I wanted to talk about the big issues. I was just so stupid. Like, what universe would I think that I'd have the skill set to be able to do that when I was still so hurt over X, Y, and Z? And the Lord showed me, Nina, you need to be able to handle and process being annoyed before you can ever even think that you should deal with rage. Like, we want to weed that out of you completely first. And so navigating the smaller things and then feeling like, oh, and we would say to each other, we did that conversation pretty well. Yes, let's stop here. Like it's like training horses,
Yeah.
or
Don't
dogs.
mess it up.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
let them succeed, you end on the good note. Okay. All right. That's all for today, folks. No more. Yeah. And you fall
And
into this.
celebrate those wins.
Exactly. And don't push it. Don't think, okay, well, I did great on this. Let's try one more. Like, no, don't do it. Like not till you've got a bunch of those under you. Then you might be able to handle one more thing. But for the most part, just do one topic at a time and keep it
Hmm.
small until you can build on that. But to your point, we had to fail at that. I had to fail at that, um, to figure out this isn't working. I
Yeah.
can keep doing what doesn't work, or I can learn something completely different, which I did. And then, wow, God works miracles
And
later.
it's amazing how when you start with those seemingly menial or trivial things, it'll be very evident to you when you get to the point that you can't go any further.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be very
Yes.
evident when, okay, we did this successfully and this successfully and this successfully, and bam,
Yep.
we can get past this.
Let's
Well,
table that.
there's where our learning needs to come in.
Yep. New level, same devil.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what Paul talks about when he's like, glory to glory. We're being transformed one thing at a time, that then we level up to that. And then we discover a new area of
Hmm.
opportunity, we'll say. And if we don't go back to the ways of old, the ways we, initially leaning on Jesus for like, okay, I'm a 5-year-old here. What do you want me to know? And let him walk us through it. Like it just doesn't work any other way.
Yeah. Well, I think having the faith of the 5-year-old is sometimes a whole lot more beneficial than the faith that we have because we've seen too much.
Uh-huh.
We've been through so many things and seen too much. And we look at that 5-year-old and say, oh, how naive you are. And I think that's the way God wants us to be. He
Yeah.
talks about having the faith of a mustard seed. A
Mm-hmm.
mustard seed is nothing. It's infinitesimal. It's so tiny you can barely see
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all, just but have a little bit, but all of that little bit.
Yes.
And what can be done with that is it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, mustard plants are monsters of things. Like
Yeah.
you grow one of those, it takes over everything. It's ginormous.
I thought mustard grew in yellow bottles.
I'm so glad you're enlightened.
Imagine my surprise when I
Yeah.
found out that it's actually a plant.
Yeah, it actually is. It actually is. I've learned, not to digress here, but I've learned this garden season why they call it squash. My other parts of my garden have been squashed by massive amounts of zucchini and pumpkin and watermelon. Like I didn't intend for this. I've
Yeah, you
made a
can't plant
colossal
anything.
mistake.
You can't plant anything very near your squash, or
I
it
had
will.
no idea,
Yeah,
like
you'll lose it.
none. And this is not my first rodeo, but it didn't get enough sunlight in my other garden for it to be an issue.
Yeah,
I needed 3 times the space that I have.
yeah.
Yeah. So live and learn. Next year will be better. But wow.
Spread those rows out. That's right.
Um, yeah, I think that's going to be a thing. Like maybe I'll just plant it all in the manure pile and let it do whatever it wants because that's what it does anyway. But yeah, so let's not to digress, but let's wrap this thing up. What do you want our listeners to walk away with today?
I just want you to walk away with not feeling like you have to be perfect or that you have to be an expert, a conflict resolution expert to get past small things in your marriage and to keep them
Mhm.
from becoming big things.
Yeah.
It's just always such a danger that, if we don't put the work in to learn to communicate effectively and be willing to fail at it so that we can get better at it,
Hmm.
somebody will.
Hmm.
Somebody's going to listen to us. Somebody is going to validate us. Somebody's going to affirm us. And that's when the real problems start.
Yep.
So we say, how did we get from here to here? Well, sometimes it's a pretty easy thing to see the progression of how do we get from what we thought was happily married to now we have a third person involved.
Hmm. Yep.
And it's a fairly easy progression to see when you get the whole story and say, there was never any intentionality in this process.
Right.
It's not like a plant that comes back every year no matter what.
Hmm.
Okay, that's not what relationships are like. They have to be watered, they have to be fed, they have to be pruned,
Hmm.
they have to be maintained and cared for with very specific dynamics in mind.
Yep.
So does a human relationship. So don't don't think you have to be perfect to start, but don't think that it's going to come naturally because it won't.
Hmm.
Most of the dynamics of effective and efficient communication are way unnatural. They have to be learned. Find a way to learn them.
Hmm.
Whether it's a book, whether it's a teacher at church, whether it's a therapist, uh, whether it's coming to the conference
Yep.
at greater
Yep.
impact. And there are just a lot of things like that that get taught in environments like that. And I think all of us should be willing to take an extra little step to teach ourselves or for someone to teach us.
Hmm.
Be willing to do that.
Yep. I think we're called to that. I think we're called to be mentored and then mentor others. Like let's
Mm-hmm.
all level up in that space. Love this so much. So let's give them a way of getting a hold of you. If they live in Texas,
If you live
you're
in
their
Texas and
therapist.
you're
Yeah.
looking for a therapist,
Yep.
I happen to know one. And you can reach me by email at Cargrove. No, I'm sorry, wrong email. You can reach me by email at kylehargrovelpc@gmail.com. And I'll respond to you usually within 24 hours, if not shorter than that. Um, or you can send me a text at 817-475-3708. And I'd really love to hear from you.
Awesome. Yeah. So hopefully the Texans will get more help in that space. And those of you that are interested in learning more about Greater Impact, feel free to pop over to the next episode, hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a single thing. And we want to see you thrive in your Christian marriage. Have a great rest of your day. See you in the next episode.